Okay.
Right, that might be a limit too. iPhone person.
Well, good.
All right.
Good.
That was incredible.
Good.
At the Methodist temper, but. You know,
And
Methodist calls and
Yeah.
Trace it out? All right.
I was really impressed.
Okay, we'll start with
So
a
we're pretty informal.
opening class.
Mr. facilitates what we're doing and there's always conversation.
So there's some prayer sheets there if you want to grab one.
Thank you.
And we'll just go right ahead and start with the opening prayers. Again, like as usual, once in English and then twice with the Tibetan chant. I take refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by listening to teachings of the other Paramitas, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And then in Tibetan, twice. Sangye chadang soki chognam la jangchu gardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jinzo gibe sonam ki rola penchir sangye druparso Sangye chadang soki chognam la jangchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi jinso gipe sonam ki rola penchir sangye druparso. The four immeasurable thoughts. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then think, may I be blessed and inspired by enlightened beings to have the power to accomplish this. Then on the top of the next page, the backside, it's what's called the 7-limb prayer. And just imagine in the space in front of you, enlightened beings, highly realized beings, spiritual teachers, all beings that are there for the benefit of us and all sentient beings. Imagine them in front of you. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the merits of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until samsara ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate the merit created by myself and others to the great enlightenment. And then the mandala offering. And here what we are imagining is that all sentient beings find their way to perfect peace, happiness, and enlightenment, and that we can be part of that process. Sajipaki Jukshin Meto Dramri Rablingji Nidegen Vadi Sangye Shindu Midevadi Rohunam Dakshinha Chapasho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryathaya. Okay, hello everybody. Hey, hi guys. There are some, we've got some, where are the folding chairs? Are they out in the?
Well, that's just the kitchen here.
Oh, they can get kitchen chairs too, yeah, that's gonna work.
Where are the folding chairs?
Well, I didn't know if there were any like,
You know what?
I know what they are, but that was my way of saying, I'm gonna get folding chairs.
Well.
50 years of marriage and you still don't know. what
Right,
it
she
is?
doesn't know, she knows, she knows, that's why she sort of sat there. So sorry, I love it. Okay. Okay, so this is Adam, and it's Christine?
Christina. yes.
Christina, Brian, Don,
Carol.
Carol. So what we've been, well, working on here before we actually get into the discussion or the topic today, what we've been working on is building up a visualization for taking refuge in a safe direction or a safe direction in our life. And so this is all part of a traditional Buddhist visualization that we do. And we've been building up layers of it as we go along, because it's a quite a bit to remember and become familiar with. And that's the whole point, is to become very familiar with it so that we understand the symbolism of everything and what it is we're actually trying to achieve. So it uses the process of visualization, and usually what happens, most people say, I can't visualize anything, I can't do it. And really, visualization is something we do all the time. We don't do a thing without visualizing it first. If you think I'm going to, I need to go into the kitchen and make my breakfast, you visualize it. You visualize it before you do it. So it's not like you're actually seeing this in like you see with your eyes. It is a mental image. And visualization is a process, it's the very first process in achieving any goal we set out to do. Like I said, if the goal is to go to the kitchen and make breakfast, we visualize it. Just watch yourself next time you do anything. You're gonna go to the store. You visualize getting in the car, turning on the key, the whole deal. So visualization is a process that the mind actually uses to accomplish goals and get things in motion. So this is why the visualization that's been set up by the Tibetans is so effective and so important. It helps us get to the goals that we're looking for: happiness, fulfillment, enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. So let's get into this. I guess, Kavita, you don't have to put up anything quite yet, because we're going, each time I'm adding little new bits to it. So we're going to have a couple of new bits today that are different from the previous times. So what you want to do now is, this is creative imagination here. And what we want to do is imagine various qualities of Buddhas and enlightened beings, and we want to imagine this in a spatial kind of relationship with us and all sentient beings. So here's where the visualization starts. Imagine in the space in front of you a huge, magnificent platform of rainbow-like beautiful light, having 4 equal sides. So this is a huge square platform of beautiful light. It is supported by the powerful energy of 8 majestic lions, also made of rainbow-like light. 4 lions supporting the center of each side of the platform in the cardinal directions, and 4 lions supporting the 4 corners of the platform in the ordinal directions. Is that clear for everybody?
Mhm.
Okay. So hold that. This platform serves as a large base upon which the objects of refuge will be seated. This base should be imagined to be level with the gap between your eyebrows. This is not too high above you. You're not too high above it. It's just right level. 5 lotus thrones of light sit on this base. one in the center, the other four situated around it in the four cardinal directions. So it's almost as if they make kind of a cross on this platform of light. The central throne, lotus throne, is slightly higher than the other four. Now imagine that you are surrounded by all sentient beings in every realm of existence throughout the entire universe. They are seated together with you, looking at the platform of light, supporting the 5 lotus thrones of light. Seated directly to your left and right, respectively, are your mother and father. They symbolize the countless beings around you with whom you've had close karmic relationships at one time or other throughout multiple realms of existence since beginningless time. All of these beings are undergoing the suffering of their various types of rebirth. However, you visualize them in the form of human beings, capable of speech and comprehension, who are lost, confused, and looking for the refuge of a safe direction to take in their life. Now you can put up Buddha Shakyamuni, please. So we're going to put up on the screen the figure that we're about to visualize.
Sorry, I'm just.
And I mean, some of you already have a good idea of what this is. We've talked about it a lot in the symbolism, but there'll be many new people who will be watching this or are here today. And so it's good to have it for everyone to see. So that is Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha of our present, you might say, eon.
It's actually a photograph of that.
And can you, I have a Buddha like this at home.
Mhm.
But can you explain to me the bowl that he's holding? Do
The
you know?
bowl is it's what a monk would normally use, a begging bowl.
Okay.
But what it actually
And is he in a mudra?
represents is reliance. Because when the monks are relying on others for their food, it's reliance. But what's in the bowl, the white, beautiful thing in the bowl, represents the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. So the bowl is a very important part of this symbol, because it not only represents that we're relying on the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha, but the way we rely on other sentient beings. So we rely on both things. We rely on enlightened beings and sentient beings in order to progress on the path to enlightenment. And this will be explained, but okay. So generate the visualization of Shakyamuni Buddha seated on the lotus throne at the center of the huge platform. His figure represents refuge, a safe direction for one's life in this vast and unfathomable universe of infinite possible directions that we could take. He is the embodiment of all Buddhas, spiritual masters, bodhisattvas, noble Arya beings, Dharma protectors, and Dharma realizations. From your heart, make the request of the Buddha that you be inspired to follow the path to full enlightenment. Make this request on behalf of all living beings who are trapped in cyclic existence. Rays of light stream from the figure of the Buddha before you. This light enters your body and quickly removes all negativities, obscurations, and hindrances, freeing you to progress quickly on the path. Imagine that this light flows not only to you, but to all the sentient beings situated in space around you. Imagine that they all receive, absorb, and hold the Buddha's inspiration and blessings as we recite the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. And I don't know if you can put the mantra up on there, Kavita. Probably for each one of these, we'll have to have both the figure and the mantra. It's the Om Muni Muni.
We're gonna have to visualize.
That's it. That's it. That's the one.
Let's look at
Okay.
that.
What I'm saying is we're gonna have to visualize the.
Well, we've all had a good look at Shakyamuni Buddha. So we'll just hold him on the, yeah. Just hold that visualization. And what we will say is Om Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. Okay. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. 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 Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. Tayata Om Muni Muni. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Swoha. So imagine that the blessings of this mantra and the blessings coming from Shakyamuni Buddha, that we receive these blessings into our being, we absorb them and we keep them and they take root in our being so that they can grow. One thing I want to say about these mantras and the way they are done is the syllables, they form frequencies. Then the frequencies have a meaning. The words have a meaning, but the frequencies also. So you want to keep those frequencies constantly moving with the breath, because this energy rides on the winds of our breath. So you can just, rather than taking breaths in between each phrase or something, you just can say it very softly, almost like a whisper.
It's like singing.
But you keep the breath going and you keep the syllables going. You keep the frequency of the energy going while you're having this visualization.
What you're saying is when you're inhaling, you can.
When you're inhaling, you can keep the thing going, especially if you're talking at a whisper. So it doesn't ever have to stop. You don't have to break the flow of the energy. Okay, so now we're back there with everybody, sitting out there, looking at the platform of light. There are 5 thrones of lotus thrones. Shakyamuni Buddha is on the central one that's a little bit higher than the others. Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, was up on the screen right now. White Buddha with 4 arms and hands. The Buddha of compassion, Chenrezig, now emerges from Shakyamuni Buddha's heart and sits on the slightly lower lotus throne to the Buddha's right, which is our left as we're visualizing it, as we're looking at it. Chenrezig embodies the qualities of immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity that are representative of the lineage of the compassion wing, also known as the lineage of extensive deeds. From your heart, generate the request to Chenrezig that you be inspired to cultivate these 4 measurable qualities within your being: love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Make this request on behalf of all the beings situated in space around you who want to be happy, but are trapped in the pervasive suffering of cyclic existence. Imagine that a duplicate of Chenrezig now emerges from his heart and comes to the crown of your head. The duplicate Chenrezig superimposes his body of radiant white light with 4 arms and hands onto your body. Think of yourself as an aspiring bodhisattva on the path to enlightenment, and Chenrezig as your coach, training you in the way to embody the 4 immeasurables for the benefit of all beings. Imagine that you look at the countless sentient beings in the space around you while holding both their Buddha nature and your Buddha nature at your heart in the form of a sky blue jewel made of light held between your 2 inner hands of love and compassion. In your outer right hand, imagine you are continually moving the beads of a crystal mala, transmitting immeasurable joy to all beings around you, with the prayer that they be inseparable from the happiness that is completely free from suffering. In your outer left hand, you hold a radiant blue lotus by its stem in a gesture of immeasurable equanimity toward the countless beings around you, knowing that all beings equally have the potential through their Buddha nature and clear light continuums of consciousness to arise from the darkness of ignorance and the karmic stains of their afflictions and obscurations, to emerge as fully enlightened beings. Feel that all sentient beings receive, absorb, and keep these blessings as you recite Chenrezig's mantra. And this is one of the most well-known mantras. This is Om Mani Padme Hum. Imagine that you're holding beads in your right hand as you chant this, crystal beads. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Padme Hum, Om Mani 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 Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Now Chenrezig goes back, the duplicate of Chenrezig leaves you, goes back to the Chenrezig and connects with Chenrezig on the lotus throne next to the Buddha. Now, Manjushri, and you can put Manjushri up. Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom.
See if I, I tried to make this easier, more smooth by.
Too much thinking, right?
So it does happen from time to time,
So this is Manjushri.
surprisingly.
And you'll notice that Manjushri is holding a very deep blue colored sword in his right hand and is slightly over the right side of his head. Also notice that Chenrezig is holding at his heart, right at his heart, is the stem of a lotus, and that stem is winding its way up to just below his left ear. So he's holding the stem in his left hand, and the stem is traveling up and sort of blossoming under his left ear. And within the center of that blossom is a text called the Prajna Paramita, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, which is the Buddha's explanation of the nature of reality. So Buddha, so Chenrezig being the Buddha of wisdom, these are the symbols. The sword is cutting through our delusions, our misconceptions, our misunderstandings of subject and object and the nature of reality, conventional reality, ultimate reality. These are things most of us don't understand at all. And Chenrezig, by understanding the nature, the wisdom aspect of the path, we're able to cut through these delusions and understand how reality actually exists. So that's just a quick introduction to Manjushri. There'll be more as we do this visualization. So now Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, emerges from Shakyamuni Buddha's heart and sits on the slightly lower lotus throne to the Buddha's left, which is our right as we're looking at. Manjushri embodies the qualities of enlightenment that are representative of the wisdom wing of the path, also known as the lineage of profound view. From your heart, generate the request to Manjushri that you be inspired to have the motivation, enthusiasm, and perseverance to develop your understanding of the profound view of emptiness. Make this request on behalf of all living beings who, due to ignorance of the true nature of their self and phenomena, perpetually generate destructive karmic actions of body, speech, and mind that bind them to the dissatisfaction and suffering of cyclic existence. Now imagine that a duplicate Manjushri emerges from his heart and comes to the crown of your head. The duplicate Manjushri superimposes his body of light onto your body. Again, think of yourself as an aspiring bodhisattva on the path to enlightenment, and Manjushri is your coach, training you in the way to understand the empty nature of self and phenomena in order to attain liberation and enlightenment for the sake of all beings. As Manjushri, your body is made of brilliant saffron light that radiates out like the sun in all directions to dispel ignorance and mistaken views. In your right hand, you hold a deep blue double-edged sword with a golden Vajra handle above the right side of your head. The double-edged sword is wrapped in a blaze of fire toward the tip of the blade, where the two edges come together and meet. This sword of wisdom cuts through and destroys afflictions and obscurations resulting from ego, self-grasping ignorance that leads to nihilistic views, and the dualistic two-sided views of self and other, conventional reality and ultimate reality, and subject and object. In your left hand, you hold the stem of a lotus at your heart. The stem curves its way up toward your left side to just below your left ear, where it blossoms into a lotus flower of light, the center of which holds the Prajnaparamita Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. This signifies that by listening to wisdom teachings, studying them, contemplating them, and fully familiarizing yourself with them, you will develop the methods to cut through and destroy your ignorance and ego-based views. Imagine that you and all sentient beings receive, absorb, and keep these blessings of Manjushri so that they take root in your hearts as we recite Manjushri's mantra, Om Arapasanadi. Om Arapasanadi. And if you can get that up there so everybody can see it. Om Arapasanadi. So at the end of the last round, when we get to the last round of this, Repeat the final syllable D many times. So it would be Oma Rapatsana D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D when we get to the very end, the last time. And when we're doing this, when we're going D D D D D D D D D D, imagine your left hand that's holding the stem of the lotus, which is right at your heart. Inside, right at the spot, is what is called the heart chakra. And in the center of the heart chakra, is what is called the indestructible drop, the drop of energy that each of us carry with us always from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And what this actually contains within it is our clear light conscious continuum. Our continuum of clear light consciousness. And within that clear light consciousness resides our Buddha nature, which means it is a nature that we have only in a potential state, like a seed that hasn't been fertilized and cultivated. But we have the capacity within us to go all the way to enlightenment. It's part of our nature. So when we're saying at the end of this mantra, imagine that right at the indestructible drop, as if it's waking up our clear light continuum, waking up our Buddha nature. Okay. So here we go. I know it's a lot to hold in your head, but with practice, it isn't so bad. Okay. Om Rabbasana di 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 Om Rabbasana Om Rabbasana di 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 Sana di Om Rabbasana 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 di Now, Vajradhara. So if you can put up the blue Vajradhara. Vajradhara is what is called the primordial Buddha. And what Vajradhara represents is the potential that we have to become a fully enlightened being. So, for instance, when Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, Gautama, achieved enlightenment, they say he attained the state of Vajradhara. This is a state connected to our Buddha nature, our capacity actually to go all the way to enlightenment, but it's the potential Buddha that we can become. So they say that Shakyamuni Buddha is inseparable from Vajradhara. So Vajradhara now is coming out of Shakyamuni Buddha's heart. It represents all sentient beings' innate capacity for enlightenment. He emerges from Buddha Shakyamuni's heart and sits on the slightly lower throne behind the Buddha. Vajradhara is a name which means diamond holder. In other words, he's holding the primordial, indestructible Buddha nature. When they say diamond, they're referring to something that is indestructible. So Vajradhara holds this indestructible Buddha nature. Vajradhara is deep blue in color and represents the lineage of what are called consecrated practices, known variously as Vajrayana, Tantrayana, and Mantrayana. At Vajradhara's heart is Vajrasattva. So if you can put Vajrasattva up. Vajrasattva, now this picture shows Vajrasattva his body as being white, but in our visualization, everything is white. The lotus is white. Everything Vajrasattva is wearing is white. So just imagine Vajrasattva as this brilliant white being, okay? Vajrasattva, that name means diamond being. Vajrasattva therefore means indestructible being. And what Vajrasattva represents is our own, yours and mine, your own indestructible Buddha nature that exists as potential within your clear light continuum of consciousness. So rather than being the primordial Buddha that we all can become, Vajrasattva represents you and what you can become. Vajrasattva emerges from the heart of Vajradhara and comes to the crown of your head, where he is seated at the center of a lotus with his legs crossed in the full lotus position. His entire figure, including the lotus, is made of brilliant white light emanating out in all directions. In his right hand, close to his heart, he holds a vajra. This is a vajra. This is a symbol. They either call it a diamond scepter or a thunderbolt, meaning it's indestructible. It's an indestructible thing. So Vajrasattva is holding this indestructible. They think of it as a weapon, but it's a weapon to destroy all of our ignorance, destroy our afflictive emotions. This indestructible quality that we have as potential. So in his right hand, close to his heart, he holds the Vajra. The Vajra is a symbol of skillful means, representing the compassion or method aspect of the path, meaning the things that we can learn how to do skillfully that will grow our love, grow our compassion, be of benefit to others. In his left hand, Vajrasattva is holding an upturned bell, close to his left hip. The bell represents emptiness, the empty nature of all things, meaning nothing exists independently. Everything is empty of existing independently. This is what the wisdom is talking about. So in this one being, Vajrasattva has both the compassion path and the wisdom path in union. And this is what we want to be doing with ourselves, unifying compassion and wisdom within us. Vajrasattva embodies the union of compassion and wisdom in one figure. Visualize Vajrasattva as a ball of powerful, brilliant white light at the top of your head. Recognize that he represents your own innate capacity to reach the highest levels of bodhisattva realizations that lead directly to omniscient Buddhahood. Imagine that a portion of the powerful white light from Vajrasattva goes to the base of your body. As you recite the Vajrasattva 100-syllable mantra 3 times, imagine that the white light starts to fill your entire being from the bottom up. It fills all of your cells in your physical body, your nervous system, as well as all of your energetic winds, the prana that moves through your energetic system of channels and chakras, so that every part of you is gradually being cleansed of negative karma. Visualize your negative karma takes the form of dark energetic matter, which is being dissolved and pushed upward by the white light. As you imagine the cleansing light moving upward through every part of your being, continue to recite the mantra. Finally, imagine the white light pushes the remaining dark energy through the crown of your head and directly into Vajrasattva's powerful, brilliant white light at the top of your head, where it completely is dissolved and gone. Imagine all sentient beings in the space around you, each with their own Vajrasattva at his or her head, are also being purified along with you. So we get the mantra up. And we'll do this 3 times, not too quickly, because this is a lot to look at, and it's a lot to memorize. But our teachers. Well, our particular teacher didn't even suggest it. He said, "You will memorize it, and you will do this." But it's highly suggested to memorize this, and to take the time to do it. So we'll go through this pretty slowly because this is new for some of you. Om Benza Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benza Sato Teno Petikya Dridro Mebawa Suto Kyoyo Mebawa Supo Kyoyo Mebawa Anurakto Mebawa Sawa Siti Metrayatsa Sarva Kama Sutsame Setam Shriram Kuru Hun Ha 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 ho Bhagawana Sarva Tata Gata Benza Mame Munja Benza Bawa Maha Samaya Sato Ahum Pe. Again, slightly faster. Om Benza Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benza Sato Teno Petikya Dridro Mebawa Suto Kyoyo Mebawa Supo Kyoyo Mebawa Anurakto Mebawa Sawa Siti Metrayatsa Sarva Kama Sutsame Tsetam Sriram Kuru Hum Ha 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 ho Bhagawana Sarva Tata Gata Benza Mame Munja Benza Bawa Maha Samaya Sato Ahum Pe. We'll do it one more time at the same speed, but now try to bring in that visualization of the light, cleansing all of your negative karma and going out through the crown of your head and just completely dissolving into this brilliant ball of light, which is your Vajrasattva, your future high state. Om Benza Sato Samaya Manu Palaya Benza Sato Teno Petikya Driro Mebawa Suto Kyoyo Mebawa Supo Kyoyo Mebawa Anurakto Mebawa Sawa Siti Metrayatsa Sarva Kama Sutsame Tsetam Sriram Guru Hum Ha 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 ho Bhagawana Sarva Tata Gata Benza Mame Munja Benza Bawa Maha Samaya Sato Ahum Pe. So imagine, visualize that your body now is completely clean and clear and filled with white light. And so are all the sentient beings surrounding you. And Vajrasattva now goes back into the heart of Vajradhara. And all the Vajrasattvas on top of the heads of all the sentient beings around you go back into the heart of Vajradhara. Now we're going to add something completely new. Remember,
completely different.
I know, but for those of us who have been maybe doing it for 9 or so weeks. So remember, there are 5 thrones. We haven't touched the one that's in front of the Buddha. Okay. So here we go. Next, can you put up His Holiness the Dalai Lama? This particular picture of His Holiness comes from, His Holiness has a summer palace up in Dharamsala, India. It's called Norbalinka, and painted on the
recreation.
It's a recreation of the one that actually existed in Tibet.
Right.
So painted on the walls it's just unbelievable what are painted on the walls. Instead of wallpaper, everything is painted with images of Buddhas, and it's just incredible. The statues, everything. We even went to our teacher took us into His Holiness's room where he meditates and all of that stuff. So on the wall, as you were going up the stairs towards his room, among many other paintings of Buddhas, is this picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Now you see, with his right hand, he's got what is called it's called the teaching mudra. the thumb and the index finger are together in a circle and the other fingers are up like this. And he is also holding the stem of the lotus. As we are realizing what the lotus represents is our capacity to grow out of the muck and mud of our afflictive obscurations and emotions and negative karma, and become this beautiful, beautiful expression of enlightenment, of an enlightened being. This is what the lotus represents. So this means that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is teaching us how to do this.
There's a little, I don't know if you.
He's also at the
A
bottom,
book, there's a Tegchok book in that lotus.
another book in the lotus. That would be
Probably.
dark. Yeah. So also scroll down a little so they can see what's at his feet. This is a symbol of world peace. Bringing peace to the world as we become enlightened, as we are able to then help other sentient beings remove all of their afflictions and obscurations to become enlightened. Peace will come throughout the whole universe, actually, once this occurs. And we don't have to worry about how long it's going to take. We just start. We just start with ourselves. So this is what we want to be imagining when I talk about this next thing. So now imagine we have the platform of light, the lions are holding it up, there are 5 lotuses, higher one is Shakyamuni Buddha, Chenrezig, Manjushri, Vajradhara behind him. Now in front, the lotus in front, His Holiness the Dalai Lama emerges from Shakyamuni Buddha's heart and sits on the slightly lower lotus throne in front of the Buddha. His Holiness represents our personal connection to the lineages of method or compassion, profound view or wisdom, and consecrated practices, also known as Vajrayana, Tantrayana, and Mantrayana. These practices have been passed down from teacher to teacher, beginning with Shakyamuni Buddha, to Maitreya and Manjushri, then to Asanga and Nagarjuna, who is the author of the text we're studying, then to Shantideva and Atisha, all the way to Tsongkhapa and His Holiness's own tutors, Trijang Rinpoche and Ling Rinpoche. So he represents a lineage that has come down to us. His Holiness is teaching the Dharma while in a state of meditative absorption, encouraging us to study the Dharma and put our studies into practice. The gurus from whom you have received teachings emanate from His Holiness the Dalai Lama's heart, and they surround his lotus throne. So they're lower, they're on the platform of light surrounding His Holiness's throne. Your gurus, your spiritual teachers who are still alive, sit on cushions. Those who have already died sit on moon discs that are in the center of lotuses of light. For example, gurus such as Geshe Drakpa Gelek, Lama Geshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who have already died, sit on luminous white moon discs in the center of lotuses of light around His Holiness. Gurus such as Geshe Lobsang Nima, Venerable Robina Courtin, and Thubten children who are still alive sit on cushions surrounding this lotus throne. All the figures in this visualization have rainbow-like bodies, whose nature is clear, bright light. So just imagine that. Just imagine that image. And imagine that they are there in person and they radiate brilliant light toward you. So we'll leave that visualization now. Of course, there is more. Not a whole lot more, but there's more. Imagine now that Vajradhara, Vajrasattva, Manjushri, Chenrezig, and all the sentient beings surrounding you, as well as His Holiness the Dalai Lama and your gurus, dissolve back into the heart of Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha now gets smaller and smaller as he comes to the crown of your head and dissolves into you. Imagine the Buddha takes his seat upon an open lotus of light at your heart, the center of your heart chakra. The lotus gently closes and holds the Buddha and this entire refuge visualization safely within it. Okay, so that's what we'll leave visualizations for today. You can see that it's a practice in itself, and it's a powerful one. It's a really good one because it turns our mind, it habituates our mind towards these very positive thoughts, beneficial thoughts, and the more we recite these mantras and do the visualizations and think of these energies of these enlightened beings working with us like coaches, the more powerful it becomes, the more real it becomes for us, the more energy we get from this, and we begin to start to turn around. We begin to change directions in our life towards a much more positive goal than we have been. So I just wanted to talk about that, and we'll keep practicing those. Now we're going to get, yeah.
I hadn't checked in a couple of weeks. Is this on the site now already?
The videos?
No, the text that you were.
The text from, yes, the text from last week, this text from right now is not up there yet,
Okay,
but last week's is.
okay.
And this.
Everything is up to date except right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that from this book? Or-
No, those, it's actually from what we were taught.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's not, you won't find it in the book.
Oh, okay.
But I thought it was really, as long as the information about the afflictive emotions and the negative karma and the positive karma, all of that's in the book, we should put the
Yeah.
practice with it so that it becomes very meaningful to us rather than just info to
Yeah.
read. So now we go to today. And today is about changing the direction of our life, like I said. In last week's session, we discussed Nagarjuna's presentation of what are called 10 virtuous actions and 10 non-virtuous actions, or destructive actions and afflictions of body, speech, and mind. And these are 10 actions, the destructive ones, that the Buddha advised us to abandon if we want to attain happiness and fulfillment. We need to let go of these destructive actions. And they're actions that are quite common, that we're all pretty familiar with. We went over them in detail last time, so I'm not going to go over too much detail today, but so this, a skillful means of doing this as a practice. Oh, those are our two cats fighting.
She did that, yes.
Yes, honey girl doesn't like.
Honey.
Yeah.
He's not, this must display one of they're displaying some of the 10 actions we're not to.
So yes.
Yeah.
It's 10 actions. Making a fear and a confusion,
Anger, negativity.
anger, and negativity.
There we go. They just
So
got
that's
this part
the
right
first
there.
lesson.
There you go.
It occurs with everyone, all of us who are.
Obviously, they've
in
got
cyclic
a lot of
existence.
history together over the many lives.
Yes, there's a karmic connection there. I hate you.
I've got some of that going on in my life. So anyway, moving on. Yes,
All right, so
back to us.
back to the change of direction.
Yeah,
So a skillful means of dealing with these 10 negative actions and the opposite, which would be the 10 positive actions of body, speech, and mind, is through a practice, a Buddhist practice that the Tibetans call shakpa. As you could transliterate it as S-H-A-K-P-A, shakpa. And shakpa means to change direction, to turn it around. So up till now, we've been just biting the hook in terms of our anger, our attachment, our jealousy, our lying, our stealing, our cheating, our bad mouthing other people, All these kinds of things are some of these kinds of actions of body, speech, and mind, of sort of thinking ill of other people, intending to harm them, things like that. This is something that's all quite familiar to us because we've all, at some level, even the killing, we've done it with insects and animals, even. So we all have done some of this. So what we want to do is turn that around. And the first aspect of that is to what we did with Vajrasattva, the ball of light that was at the top of our head, and we're removing all of these karmic imprints. They call them imprints because what they are is habitual actions that we've taken since, they say, beginning of this time. Who knows what we were, some kind of animal or amoeba, but still habitual actions that have to do with negative actions of the body, negative actions of the mind. And of course, with humans and dogs, speech, I guess you could say. Cats, you know. So what we want to do is we want to remove from our energetic being, and then that energy goes into our physical being as well. We carry those imprints, those habitual imprints within us. So what the Vajrasattva practice was doing is it's removing those imprints. There's another aspect to that where you then, with that pure, clean, cleared out, you've removed the imprints. And what you want to then do, using Vajrasattva again, is generate positive imprints. Start to create positive habits, which are the opposite of the negative ones. So it's a method, shakpa is a method of turning it all around, turning your negative actions around, turning them into positive actions so that you can generate the merit to quickly continue on the path. If our minds are disturbed by our hatred and our anger and our jealousy and our craving attachment for something, our minds can't be clear to actually travel this path. So we have to turn it around. We have to change directions. We have to purify that and then replace it with something that is very, very beneficial. So that's what shakpa is about. Because it actually doesn't make sense to keep acting, speaking, and thinking in the same way and think we're going to get any kind of different result than what we see here on this planet. Just look around, right? So that's what shakpa is about. And I want to talk about, I'm going to give a little introduction to all of this. The Buddha's very first public teaching that he gave after he became enlightened began with an acknowledgement of suffering, that suffering is a feature of life here. Like I said, we don't have to look very far, just in our own mind, our own household, and then just out, we see it everywhere. So suffering, it's definitely a problem. All of us are born into physical, social, and emotional environments that vary in their levels of being less than perfect. All of us, because this is samsara. So whatever we're born into is not going to be perfect. It's all less than perfect emotionally, physically, or socially. And all of us struggle with the ways in which those environments have affected us and continue to affect us. Because like I said, remember, we hold the imprints of all of it. If you just look back at how you grew up, and of course some of it was good, but some of it wasn't. And we can see that there are imprints that were created in us, habitual patterns that we have, that we are still holding on to, still haven't got out of our system. So this is what shakpa is about, getting it out of our system. What we do is we mobilize our energies to get what we think we need to make us happy. And this includes all kinds of activities and stuff and substances that seem to comfort us and make us feel better. Things like the great job, perfect kinds of relationships, a good social or comfortable social or financial or economics position, or the perfect place to live. I mean, how many times do you hear people say, I gotta move from here. If I just move, I'll be happy. If I go to Italy, I'm gonna be happy. And yes, temporarily, you'll be happy. A couple of months, maybe more, if it's different enough, if it's distracting enough, if it's, unusual enough. But what happens is, because we haven't rid ourselves of these imprints, these destructive imprints that are in us, they just take hold and they color everything we do. We take it with us. So no matter where we go, we take ourselves with us. And we have to realize that. So what happens is, all of these things that we thought were so great turned out to be not so perfect. The relationship that we thought was just going to make everything right for us turned out to be not so perfect. The job that we thought, this is the perfect job, this is what I want. Whoa, it definitely turns out to be not so perfect. All of us have experienced that. All of us. The relationships, the substances that we think are, make us happy, the drugs, the alcohol, whatever it is, over time it doesn't work. And what happens is we just become addicted, and the addiction drags us down. So we need to be really aware of this. This is what the Buddha was talking about in his first teaching. There is suffering. And the way we go about it, the way we go about solving our suffering, is by just going after what the ego thinks is going to make things better for it. And that's the mistake we make. So this part of this teaching was that things invariably change. So we think that moving to Italy is going to be great. And like I said, for a while it is. But that changes because inside of us, we still are holding the problem. When we look at the world around us, we can readily observe the pervasive and persistent problems of imbalance, violence, discord, and confusion that have recurred in cycles throughout the entire history of the planet. This is nothing new. Just the weapons, the technology, and the media is different. So we're all aware of it, all the time, every minute. But this has been going on and on. There's nothing new about this. This is cyclic existence. It just keeps going around and around because we haven't figured out how to change that for ourselves. And
How to break the cycle.
How to break the cycle. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
In a way, it's like the biggest addiction ever.
Yeah.
The biggest addiction ever is getting drawn back into cyclic existence. So we keep chugging away, trying to find happiness as we continually get older, prone to disease, and eventually we die. And that was the Buddha's first teaching. He's basically saying to everybody, I acknowledge this, I recognize this, suffering exists, it's there. So the word that the Buddha used for suffering is dukkha, and you would transliterate that as D-U-K-K-H-A. It's a Sanskrit word, and it's derived from a prefix and a suffix that together refer to a badly fitting axle hole on a cart or chariot that makes the axle not work right. So it's out of alignment. So what the word the Buddha was using for suffering means out of alignment. That's what suffering is. Something is out of alignment. So the question is then, well, what is it that's out of alignment, and what is it out of alignment with? This is the question. So this then points to the second part of the Buddha's first teaching that he gave, and that was suffering has a cause. Suffering isn't just some self-existing thing that is, and there's nothing that we can do about it. It has a cause. So we have to find out what the cause is. According to the Buddha, all of existence consists of mutually dependent phenomena. All of space-time, all forms of energy and matter, all dimensions, all mental activities and consciousnesses, they all function interdependently. This is evident even through the most casual observation of our planet and the inhabitants on the planet. Nothing works. We don't exist in a vacuum. Nothing exists in a vacuum. We're all affected by everything. We're affected by the weather, the trees, the air, and that's affected by us. Everything's interconnected. We're affected by the news that's bombarding us every day. It affects our consciousness. Then we talk with one another about how insane this all is, how awful it is. We're all interconnected. Nobody exists, nothing exists in a vacuum, self-existing independently. That's not how this works. It's not how the universe works. It's not how anything works. This is what the Buddha is saying. The nature actually of reality is that everything is interconnected, interdependent. So in order for anything to function, nothing can function unless it's capable of interacting. A book would have no function if we couldn't hold it up, open a page, look at letters and type that have been created by humans to symbolize some kinds of meaning. It's all interconnected. If this was an independent, self-existing thing, it couldn't function. It couldn't even interact with us. We have to take it to its extreme. What does independent self-existence mean? It means that it can't actually depend on anything. It can't interact with anything. Otherwise, it changes from being independent to interactive, which is different. So this is the Buddhist point. In order for anything to function, and we obviously things are functioning, but they're out of alignment. So this is where this is heading. So these observable functional relationships can pretty well actually be expressed through the principles of mathematics. If we start with 0, what we have is the symbol of a circle, and the circle is kind of it's almost like a universal symbol. And the circle in mathematics not only represents the absence of all numbers and integers and units and things like that, but the circle also represents at the same time the potential of all numbers and units and integers and subsets and things like that. Because when you take 0 and you combine it with 1, a numero uno, every single number, every single unit, every single subset and set and real number, and I mean, everything that in mathematics is derived from 0 plus 1, both negative and positive. And the reason, and it goes, if you ask any mathematician, that extends to infinity. It never ends. Because of the 0 and because of the 1, it just keeps going to incalculable levels. And it's through mathematics that we have things like this, which can be quite helpful. It also can be quite destructive. We have atomic energy, which could be quite helpful and quite destructive. And these are all due to mathematics. Quantum physics, it's math. So this thing that the Buddha is talking about can be expressed through math, because what happens is the reason math functions and works is that the various numbers, once you add 1 to 1, you have 2, then you keep adding and you can get up to 10, then you 9, then you add a 0 to the 1, it extends it keeps going and going and going in both directions. These numbers in various ways are actually interacting with one another. They're interacting, you're adding, subtracting, dividing, fractionalizing them. They can be worked with, and that's why it functions. Everything that functions is interdependent. So we now bring this to our subjective mind and objective existence. And this is a big topic in terms of understanding how we exist and the nature of reality. And we won't get to that yet, but we'll just start approaching it. So in terms of the way numbers work, the same is actually true for us. Each one of us, you could say, is a unit of embodied conscious awareness. And we call that a person. We label that a person or a sentient being. we're able to function through mutually interactive relationships with everything we are aware of via our sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, and mental conceptions. These are called sense consciousnesses, and in Buddhism, these are called 5 physical sense consciousness, and then there's a mental consciousness. And it's through these consciousnesses that we are able to perceive and act and interact with everything around us. And we use those images and sounds and sights and everything that comes in our mental mind, our concepts, to determine the value and meaning of everything that appears to us. Just how in mathematics, values are determined by how the numbers are added and put together, we're determining by the way everything appears to us in our mental with our mental conceptions, we're determining the value they have for us and the meaning they have for us. And it's a very personal thing. Subjective consciousness is a personal thing. In Buddhism, consciousness is a term that is synonymous with mind and awareness. So when we're talking about mind in Buddhism, we're not talking about brain. Brain is a physical organ which the mind, the consciousness, works intimately with. But the mind, as I said before, the mind and the consciousness is actually something that never leaves with us, goes from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. We carry it with us as this clear light continuum of consciousness. This is why, you know, the Manjushri is holding this stem. You could even think of the stem as the continuum of our consciousness that can eventually bloom into the magnificence of an enlightened being. It resides, according to all of our teachers, right here. It goes from light, and it's a tiny, tiny, indestructible drop, which holds your clear light continuum of consciousness and holds that potential, the seed, you could say, Buddha nature. It's a potential, it's a seed. It's a seed that we can work with and develop.
So, question.
Yeah.
The reality of how we exist in terms of the timeless nature of our existence is more in accord with the energy that's residing. It's not the physical form, it's the energetic.
Right, but you can't.
We tend to, I guess because we're currently dominated by our current form of existence in this physical body, in this realm, if you will.
Yeah.
We tend to almost flip it upside down. It's as if this is transitory and the body is the thing.
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I'm trying to go through this step by step so that we can see how the problem occurred. What happens? What has happened?
Thanks.
Because I have a question, but I'm waiting for you to get to
Okay.
it.
Good girl. You're better
No, I'm not.
student than I.
So like I said, the mind is not referring to the brain. It's referring to consciousness. And in Buddhism, the mind and consciousness is always subjective. It's a subjective thing. So you have subject and you have object. The consciousness, our mind, is subjective, and everything that it looks out upon or cognizes, let's say, is the object of that subjective consciousness. Even our body is the object of our subjective consciousness. We see the body as we'll say
an external object.
Well, let's say it's an external object. We'll say it's my body. Like somehow there's something part of it that owns it, but it's external to the thing that actually owns it, right? So this is very subtle how we're doing this, but it's always subjective and objective. There's subject and object, and the consciousness itself is subjective. By definition, and you can even look this up because I do. I mean, I'm looking up when I'm writing this stuff down to make sure I'm getting it right. By definition, and multiple definitions, subjective means taking place or arising in one's mind, arising in one's awareness, according to Buddhism. That's what subjective is. taking place and arising in one's awareness. Our subjective consciousness, like I said, is personal. It's based on our own experience and the feelings, opinions, biases, and values that we come up with based on our own experience. So we have different opinions than other subjective consciousnesses do. We have different values. We have different ideas about things. It's all subjective. One could say that consciousness is that which experiences. I think Lama Passang said, the consciousness is the experiencer. So you could say that which experiences is consciousness. If there was no consciousness anywhere whatsoever, there would be no experience to be had. No experience, no objective reality to be experienced if there was no experiencer at all.
That is ever since I was very small, I've always had this question. Which is, why am I alive right now and I know it?
This is the question that neuroscience is
Right.
talking about.
Of course.
Right.
And then another time I could, and it probably has happened before, it's happened before, but I don't remember that, which of course, if you go back and try.
Well, and
So
memory is
that-
very,
that
very
is-
creative too.
Of course. So that is the nugget that I've always wondered about,
mhm.
and always thinking, there's gotta be something bigger than me that explains that question. There you go.
So, the neuroscience pioneer, Christoph Koch, puts it this way, and this is a quote: "Without consciousness, there is nothing." And he's like way up there in terms of neuroscience right now. Without consciousness, there is nothing. The only way you experience your body and the world of mountains and people, trees and dogs, stars and music is through your subjective experiences, thoughts, and memories. You act and move, see and hear, love and hate, remember the past, and imagine the future. But ultimately, you only encounter the world in all of its manifestations via consciousness. And when consciousness ceases, this world ceases as well. End quote. This is current neuroscience. Of course, they're all debating about it. Everybody's debating. Nobody actually, I mean, I've looked online a lot about this, and nobody can seem to come to any conclusion as to what consciousness is. The Buddha is pretty clear about it. It's beginningless. It's a continuum.
And it's everything. It's not just in one person.
Right, it's not in one person. Right, so, okay, so here we go. No, those are the questions that come up.
And then to me,
It's the correct question.
I was like, yeah.
to me, it's sort of whenever I hear those questions from that thing coming from neuroscientists, I think to myself, it's just science edging closer to perhaps having a better understanding of the divine.
Of course,
That's all.
of course. Many of them would not term it divine.
Well, no,
And it's just, those are all terms we use, but reality is reality. Whatever is reality,
it is.
that's what it is.
Is it really reality?
Huh?
Is it really reality?
And that could be, there you go.
Well, that's our
But you know,
that would be.
what the Buddha has said is that it's interdependent. That's the nature of it. That it functions.
Yeah.
So our subjective consciousness always has an object. Subject and object always go together. We experience our body as an object of our subjective consciousness, which I said. We experience trees, dogs, stars, and music, just like Christoph Koch said. We experience those as objects of our subjective consciousness. The world and all of its manifestations, the news, what's going on everywhere. We experience all of that as objects of our subjective consciousness.
Well, I'm turning it off all the time because no, literally.
You're not the only one.
No, and I'm also very happy, but I have to because it bothers me so much.
Yes,
I don't watch it. I'm turning it off.
I'm not looking at it anymore either.
Yeah.
So it's because it's
not-
just
I
too
know-
crazy.
I
It's
know
too
it's
crazy.
not just me.
This now brings us back to dukkha. what the Buddha was talking about, this out of alignment nature of suffering. Our subjective consciousness views the objects of our awareness as being external to it. Trust your own, look at your own experience. Does it not seem as if your hand is external to what's observing it? That everything out there that you're looking at and experience, doesn't it seem as if it exists out there externally? So, the subjective consciousness views the objects of our awareness as being external to it. This creates a split in the mind, a dualistic view where the world of external objective reality appears to us as if it exists independently of our internal subjective reality. We think that what's out there is somehow existing independently of what's in here. So it's starting to create a split in our consciousness. We consequently view our subjective mind as if it is a separate, self-existent entity that is independent of objective reality. And we, if you look at our own experience, we kind of think this way. We go, well, what's inside my mind is my private mind, and it has nothing to do with everything out there. And everything out there is not connected to my personal subjective consciousness. It is, my subjective consciousness exists independently from everything out here. This is the way, this is how we have gotten into the trouble we're in.
Well, yeah.
Personally as well as collectively.
Yeah.
So we label this kind of amorphous, formless entity of subjective consciousness. You know, where is it? What is it? We label it as me. We say, that's me. And obviously, me isn't my body, my hair, my face, my organs, my heart. Because the me is acting as if all of that belongs to it. It's the owner of all of that. And the me then will extend it out to things that it's attached to. My thermos cup for tea, my wife, my child, my dog, my cat. And we become attached to the things that have to do with me and my. And we distance ourselves from the things that are others and theirs. Or we look out and we go, I want what they have. Or I don't like what they have. Or I don't like the way they behave, so I'm going to let them know it. And that leads to
Where we're at.
bombing little children.
Yeah.
It's all due to attachment to I and me, and what I need and what I want. And it comes out of this split. You'd almost call it pathological split that's occurred with consciousness, where it's separated off into these little separate parts that say me, my, and thinks that it's not connected with the quote unquote objective reality out there that appears to exist from its own side to us.
But if the killing of children occurs and everything is interdependent, it must occur because of some interdependent.
Absolutely. But it's a, what would you call it? It's a skewing, a negative skewing, sick skewing of interdependence.
Right, like trafficking or any of these things.
Yeah, it's, of course, it couldn't happen, it couldn't function, it couldn't happen if things weren't
Every
interdependent.
world war is.
It's all, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Right, but I guess my point is, you know, throughout this whole discussion, I mean, yes, there's suffering, there's a reason for suffering that Buddha has,
Right.
figured out. There's, the subject and the object, there's our subjective consciousness and our object, and how each of us in somewhat differently interpret
Right.
what our own reality, whatever that means, is. And we, in his view, misinterpret it, so we keep repeating the mistakes of our interpretation over and over and over again. But at some point, then you have karma that comes in to also add to this suffering, and the karma is also, can be individual, can be collective, can be environmental, can be, different kinds of karma. So, I'm sitting here thinking, how do we, and I know you're gonna tell, I know you said, I know Buddha says, here's the path out of this, but, for the most part, as you've already, recommended, since the beginning of this time, we as a society, as a race, continue to repeat the same behavior over and over and over.
Right. And this
Because
is,
we
this
do
is
ourselves.
the out of alignment he's talking about, because interdependence it's functioning, but it's functioning in a warped, twisted, anti-connected way. It's bizarre. It's like completely, it's pathological.
Well, and that's what really worries. I have two stepchildren, 16 and 14, and I'm a teacher, and as I watch children and young people being so involved in this, in their face, they're even less connected. They're connecting to the system that is not real. It's very frightening.
So the problem I described, where our subjective consciousness it appears as if everything exists outside, and it creates this split where the subjective consciousness then goes, me must exist independently and self-existent if everything else is, and that's where interdependence gets skewed and out of alignment. Because you're saying I exist independently. And my needs and my wants and my things are the things that are important to me, numero uno.
So what, sorry to interrupt, but what would you, in this scenario, let's say what's going on in the Middle East right now? When you talk, with all the fighting that's going on and the slaughter of, innocent individuals. And you can explain that based upon this misappropriated sense of I, or sense of self, or sense of me, or ego, or whatever you want to do. What would you do then from a Buddhist perspective, given that people exhibit this kind of behavior? And what's the right way to think about this? And what's the right way to act or not act through this kind of situation from a Buddhist perspective?
It's interesting that's a good, interesting question. I popped into my head this.
Well, that's
what
actually
happened to His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetans. Exactly what we see happening in his response is very sad that it takes a long time, because it is on a one by one person individual basis that the change happens. But anyway.
The solution is to fix our connection. Fix our pathological split that occurred and see that we've made a mistake. That's the only thing we can do. As we fix our particular connection, then the subject and object is not going to appear the same way as it did. And we will work to help others fix their connections as well. In any way that works for them. But we actually can't help the situation until we fix it internally ourselves. And that's what the Buddha first said, there's a problem, it's called suffering. It's, this dukkha. He said there's a cause. How did this happen? It was the split that occurred. Then he says it can be stopped. It can be ceased, but we are the ones, we can cease it for ourselves, and everyone else can stop it for themselves. But it's one at a time. But we don't even understand. We think that it may not be as infinitely it may not take infinite time the way we think about it. Because right now we're locked into this mistaken view and it seems like, oh, this is just impossible. But if we were actually to correct our view of the way things actually exist, who we are and what everything, the objects that appear and how we are actually connected to it and we are actually basically generating it.
That, it doesn't that bring up the question, which that's often, it's why is this happening to me?
Right.
It's like that it's external and it's being directed at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way, I mean, in some ways, you have to think of, if you were going to talk about me, you'd have to go, well, then me includes everything, everybody,
I mean,
everyone.
Maybe you're right, maybe we're at a point in our existence where it's still very early. And so, it's gonna take another bazillion years or whatever, but
Right.
your own recitation of history of our human race since, as long as we know, beginning of this time has been to repeat the same
Right.
behavior over and over.
That's what cyclic existence is.
Right, I get it.
And that's what we're trying
But
to
it's
liberate
fine for
ourselves.
You to say, and I'm not trying to be.
Yeah.
Confrontational, but it's fine for you to say, each of us has to make the change within ourselves, and I agree with that. But at the same time,
I
this
need to
world
make
that
them
may-
change over there.
Well,
don't
this
I?
same kind of this world may not exist.
I know, well, you know what?
This is why the Four Noble Truths are so. It seems so simplistic and we just wanna rush past it, but the Buddha said there is suffering. The nature of samsara is suffering. We have, because of our own set of delusions and mistakes, we, sitting in this room right now, are sharing in an experience in a mistaken, deluded, suffering realm, which in our lineage, we call it samsara, and that's what it is.
But the
And so
wonderful
when
thing
you look
is,
out and ask the question, how are we to approach the Middle East, or how the slaughter of all the Tibetans in Tibet by the Chinese, or the fill in the blanks,
all of us,
It's like it's not the only one.
All I know, and I asked the same question, and all I know is every time we talk about this, either Geshe Drakpa would say samsara.
Yeah.
Understand
Okay, so then-
samsara.
what
or
also
His
Geshe
Holiness-
Drakpa said about your question, he said, if this planet goes, there are plenty of others.
And then,
You know,
and then
I
His
like-
Holiness is always.
This is an
telling us,
infinite
take the
universe.
long view, take the long view,
Take
it's
the long
sad.
view.
It
But
is
you
sad.
can't,
So-
if you get locked into, I don't know.
We
yeah.
can drown in our sadness.
Well, I have a tendency to feel like that
Yeah.
I'm a pretty empathic person and I tend to take on the suffering of the world. And it can be anybody, it can be in the name. And my husband's like, you're always feeling too much for everybody, and I'm like, but shall we not carry?
What,
Are we not, is that
We're-
not, that's
we're-
not
we're
carrying
past time,
compassion?
By the way, just for.
We're
past
Who's on the schedule.
Okay.
Sorry.
well, we'll go just a little more, we'll go
These
just.
are the conversations
Um,
that we need to have.
Well, Christopher, I want to make one comment that back in the time of the Vietnam War, self-immolation was something that you could do.
Right.
And that was about all that one person could do. And it's not
That's-
recommended anymore, but it's not a problem we as individuals can solve, except by solving our own problems. with
Even the
anger
Buddhists.
and hate and greed and
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah,
I
even
know
the
this
Buddhists
is-
have done self-immolation, the Tibetans, I should say, the Tibetans.
This is simplistic, I acknowledge, but I know we all can admit that we've experienced this. When let's say you're in a gathering for a meeting, or even at a party, or even for that matter in a subway car. And someone beautiful and positive and friendly comes into that environment. It raises up the whole environment.
Yeah.
Similarly, if someone, like say, a street homeless person whose mental capacity is really fucked up and they enter into it, shifts it in a disturbing way. It's a simplistic example, but we know that this is how it works.
Mhm.
And so our job, as practitioners, our job is to enter every situation trying to improve the environment
Yeah.
energetically, through our view, through our intention, through
Yeah.
our.
This is actually what the purpose of the Vajrasattva practice. We have you visualize this part of yourself that can achieve enlightenment. And that's, first of all, what you're doing is you're sort of cleansing out or clearing these negative imprints of karma that you have. And then the second part is you use the same process, but to put imprints of positive start to create positive habits, the opposite of the 10 destructive actions. That we do the opposite. You do these 10 positive, make these 10 positive imprints on your system that have to do with the way you act, the way you speak, and the way you think. And you just keep doing it until it becomes habitual, and that helps you to change, to grow, and be who you can become. And this is actually how we will help others do the same thing. And in terms of being liberated from samsara, if you're talking about this particular path, the Bodhisattva path, the Mahayana path, that achieves liberation from cyclic existence first, and then ultimate enlightenment then, and then once you're up, have full enlightenment, there's nothing that, you're like super being. There's nothing in samsara that is going to bother you. So you go right back into this situation and work to benefit others in ways that will work for them. We don't know how many Buddhas there are. We don't know how many actually enlightened beings are on this planet right now working to help. Look at us here. We wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for our teachers, if it weren't for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, going back all the lineage back to Shakyamuni Buddha, who we are now visualizing and trying to create a relationship with. We wouldn't even be here if it weren't for them. So I have a lot of hope, actually. Who cares? I didn't want to say who cares. I was going to say who cares, but it could take a long time.
Take a long, and in our
Maybe it's
concept,
irrelevant.
And it's in our concept of
It's
time,
irrelevant.
Don, exactly.
probably, and then you're like, oh,
Once
that was
you're
fine.
enlightened, you make it go,
Yeah.
oh, what a dream that was.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
so
Seemed like a really long one.
yeah.
So, in almost, there's another analogy they use. They say when you become an enlightened being, it's as if you're stepping back into someone's dream, and you're trying to gently and in a way that's going to work for them, wake them up, wake them from the dream. So once you're awakened from the dream, it's sort of almost as if that was all just a dream. And yet the dream was scary, and there was suffering in the dream, and it was not nice. And that's what we are kind of on. We're at the it's almost like we just stuck our little toe at the very beginning of the path. It's sort of like, the scene in The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy, the witch, says, just follow the yellow brick road. And it's like this tiny little point that then starts to spiral out. And the very first thing is she just sort of puts her little ruby slipper there right on that point and takes tiny little steps. Finally, she gets in her groove, and then she's skipping down the thing. But that's where we're at that point. We're these like tiny little steps to follow this path to all the way to enlightenment. And there's a lot on that road. There's a lot that Dorothy met on that road. She confronted her own ego. That was the wicked witch. She confronted that. She had to. And what she used.
That's another class.
That's another. All right, that's another class. All right, where we stop? Okay, we stop.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that is probably of the 20th century. And in particular, the movie that they made. In particular, the movie, it's inspired. The people who worked on it were inspired by something. But it is one of the classic esoteric works of the 20th century. It's not to be underestimated. Yeah, that particular, the way it was put together. Fantastic. So we will stop there.
Get an honorary PhD in
A what?
nothingness.
In nothing.
And nothingness, that would be fine.
That'd be-
I got my PhD in nothing. Okay,
It just,
so we're quite over time, so let's just say one. No, let's do all three because they're pretty important. The closing prayers. And let's say them in English so we all understand what it is we're saying, putting into our head. So if you look at the bottom of the second page, it says dedication prayers. And we'll see two. There's the two that are in bold type there. Let's read them in English. And when it says the precious Bodhi mind, what it's talking about is this mind of bodhicitta, an awakened heart and mind that works to become enlightened, to be of benefit, to come back into the dream and help everyone. This is what a bodhisattva is in training to do. So that's what they're saying. May that mind that hasn't been born in us, may it be born and may it continue to grow. And then the next one, this is may the view of emptiness. Emptiness is sort of the opposite of saying everything exists interdependently, the way the Buddha said, and interdependently in a very constructive and beneficial way, not in a pathological, warped way. But the flip side of that is nothing exists independently, self-existent independently. It's empty of that. That's what emptiness is talking about. So these are the ideas we're putting into our head as we read this. So let's read these in English. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And the next one. May the view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And then at the very bottom of the last page, page 3, there's a final dedication, and we can just read this. When it says lamas, what it's talking about is our spiritual teachers, our gurus. In all my lives, may I not be separated from true lamas, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, fully perfecting the virtues of levels and paths. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara. And remember who Vajradhara is. It's that blue one that is the potential that we have to become. May we attain that state. And the levels and paths are talking about all the various, like I said, we start out tiny, like Dorothy on the Gelek road, but there are many levels and paths we have to go until we finally, realize what's actually going on. So that's that. Any questions before we? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all you Zoom wonderful people. I'm so happy that you join us.
Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. I will end our meeting.
Happy Easter.
I mean,
It's really neat.